got into a heated argument with a friend of mine a couple of nights ago because he called me and told me, JT, the NFL is rigged. And this is the biggest conspiracy theory that I always hear about the NFL. Oh, the NFL and the refs are always colluding with each other to make sure that Vegas never loses. And this is so far from the truth. And I always laugh when somebody's favorite team loses and their first excuse is, oh, it's rigged. The refs wanted the other team to win. That's bullshit. Because if the NFL really was rigged, the Dallas Cowboys would have way more success in the postseason than what they do. Because the NFL is rigged because they want to maximize their ratings, right? Well, the Dallas Cowboys are the most popular team in the National Football League and one of the most popular sports teams in America. So you would think that if the NFL truly was rigged, that Dallas wouldn't continue to get embarrassed in the postseason like they do every single year since the damn 90s. And if the NFL was rigged, we would see teams like the Steelers and some of the NFL's more bigger brands going further in the postseason. The NFL has no reason to rig their games. All right, the NFL is as popular right now as it ever has been. Every year the Super Bowl comes on and they reveal how many viewers are watching from worldwide. It always ends up being a new record. Every single season, the Super Bowl always exceeds the previous viewership number that it did the previous season. So there's no reason for the NFL to have to rig the outcome of games. And let's say if the NFL did, why would they not have more of their popular teams going further in the postseason? Let's be honest, bro. The Detroit Lions aren't really insanely popular. Nobody really has cared that much about Detroit until they hired Dan Campbell. And he had that press conference about biting kneecaps. And you just look at the rise of the Detroit Lions. They've quietly become America's team because they're the team that people like to root for. They're a Cinderella story. Hence the reason why the NFL doesn't have to rig these games, because whatever storyline they get, people are going to care about. The NFL is just so big that no matter who they get in the Super Bowl, it's going to be a win-win situation. Let's say you get a team that's a small market franchise, like the Jacksonville Jaguars that make it to the Super Bowl. From a casual standpoint, you would think, bro, who the hell cares about watching the Jacksonville Jaguars? Don't nobody want to see them. We'd rather see a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Kansas City Chiefs. But here's why. It still would bring in high viewership for the NFL. Everybody loves a great underdog story. So when you got a team that comes out of nowhere and has success, people get behind that. People want the underdog to win. That's why so many people remember those Eli Manning and New York Giants teams for taking down the New England Patriots and Tom Brady in the Super Bowl, because they were the underdog. If the NFL was rigged, you really thought that the NFL would allow the Giants to take down one of the greatest teams in NFL history in the New England Patriots when they were undefeated at the time? Come on, man. Not once, but twice. Like, this isn't making sense. You see, the NFL is only rigged when your favorite team loses. But when your favorite team wins and you get assistance from the officials, oh, it's not rigged. You see, I remember my freshman year of high school, my head coach used to always tell us, don't blame the refs. If you don't want the games to be close, don't allow the officials to dictate the outcome then. You see, people think that the NFL seems to be the only league that has problems with bad officiating. We got bad officiating in the NBA, in college football, and high school football, middle school football. Hell, when I played junior Pee Wee Pop Warner, they barely called any flags. I started to question if they even had eyes that were functional. There is bad officiating on every level of football. You can say that, well, the NFL doesn't want to do anything to fix it. What's the difference between having part-time referees and full-time referees? People just think just because these referees will be full-time and they can have an opportunity to watch more film that they're all of a sudden going to become better. Officiating is one of those things that it comes down to personal judgment. A lot of these calls are not set in stone. How one officiating crew views pass interference calls, another officiating crew will have a different philosophy of how they view pass interference calls. That's why you have referee crews that call games more tight and referee crews that call games a little bit more loosely. You see, having full-time referees doesn't necessarily mean that the NFL is going to get better officiating. Officiating has been terrible in the NFL for years, and it's been terrible in the football world in general ever since football first became a thing, because anytime you have things that come down to personal interpretation, you're going to have inconsistency. You're never going to get a game where you see a perfectly called football game where the referees want to get every call right. Even if we were to replace referees with AI robots, yeah, the penalties that get called will be a little bit more accurate, but there still will be mistakes made. When you have humans involved in any kinds of decision making, there's going to be a lot of flaws. There's going to be a lot of errors. I don't think it has anything to do with the fix getting put in and these referees purposely calling games for a certain team to win for a desired outcome. Because once again, if that was the case, if the NFL truly is rigged, somebody please tell me why the Dallas Cowboys haven't won a Super Bowl in HD yet. The Cowboys last won a Super Bowl when VHS and video cassette tapes were popularized. They haven't won the Super Bowl in the HD era, and I don't even know if they're going to win the Super Bowl in 4K anymore. By the time the Cowboys reach another Super Bowl, we're probably going to have 8K television screens invented, people. Like, if the NFL was truly rigged, some of the NFL's most popular teams will go way further than what they do in the playoffs every single year. People think, man, you know, the NFL has to have their golden boy Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. There's been plenty of games that Patrick Mahomes has lost fair and square. He lost to Joe Burrow. People still watch the hell out of that Super Bowl. This whole conspiracy about the NFL being rigged, scripts being wrote in is bullshit to me. And I know plenty of players that play in the NFL right now that will tell you that these outcomes aren't scripted. You may have a call that goes against you that may cost you a game, but it's not scripted. The NFL has no reason to script these outcomes. If the NFL was rigged, they would be a lot smarter with making sure that their most popular teams like Dallas doesn't get embarrassed and blown out on national television Sunday night against the 49ers. You know, the whole Super Bowl fiasco between the Patriots and the Atlanta Falcons, the Falcons choked that game because the coaching just went down the drain once they got that big of a lead. It's hard to accept the fact that, you know, maybe your favorite team lost because they weren't good enough to get the win that day, and it's easy to put the blame on the referees or the game being rigged. If that's what makes you feel better about your team losing, if that's your way of coping and getting over a loss, then that's cool. But you're wrong. The NFL is not rigged. Well, how do you know it's not rigged? There's plenty of players that have played in the NFL that have podcasts that will tell you that it's not rigged. When that Houston Texans running back came out, Arian Foster, I believe his name was, and he said that the NFL was scripted, he didn't even believe that shit, man. He was just trying to be funny, but people took it and they ran with it. But the NFL doesn't have to conspire to get desired outcomes, because regardless of who's playing in the Super Bowl, the NFL wins regardless. Everybody in the media is going to craft different storylines that people are going to get behind to get them invested into watching the Super Bowl. You see, the NFL is as big as what it is, not because it's player driven, but because it's team driven. When you're watching teams play, you're watching not all because of one player, but because you have a lot of love and passion invested in supporting said team. You see, like, if the NFL was rigged, way more teams that don't win enough would be winning a lot more. Like, the LA Chargers are in one of the biggest media markets in the world, and they suck. Like, come on, man. Some of y'all just want to find a way to put the blame on anybody else but your team not being able to get it done. The NFL wins regardless. And even when it comes to the whole Vegas thing about Vegas ain't trying to lose money, doesn't Vegas win regardless of who gets betted on? If I take the Baltimore Ravens plus 3.5, right, or minus 3.5 to beat Kansas City, and Kansas City wins instead and they cover, isn't Vegas getting paid regardless? Because somebody has to win and somebody has to lose. If you took Kansas City to win plus 3.5, you won and Vegas won. But Vegas doesn't lose because the Ravens didn't cover minus 3.5. They're still making money regardless. And the NFL is still going to get watched regardless of who plays in the Super Bowl because people get behind any storyline. You don't need a sad player there or a sad team there to make the Super Bowl watchable. Like, I remember the most excited that I've ever been to watch the Super Bowl, I believe, was 2013. We had the number one defense in the league, the Legion of Boom, or the Legion of Doom, whatever they called it, with the Seattle Seahawks going up against one of the greatest offenses in the NFL history, led by Peyton Manning and the Denver Broncos. And the Broncos got absolutely crushed in that Super Bowl. You think that the NFL expected that to happen? You thought that the NFL would rig the whole entire season to get the number one defense versus the number one offense just for a blowout to happen? The NFL doesn't like blowouts. It would be in their best interest to rig games that they know are going to be competitive. There have been Super Bowls that have had teams that nobody wanted to watch, but we still were invested in watching because we're fans of the league. Like, you really think the NFL will rig the league for Cincinnati to get to the Super Bowl? For what? Who the hell wants to watch the Bengals in the Super Bowl? No disrespect to Cincinnati fans, but I'm just trying to understand the logic of the people who say that the NFL is rigging games on purpose. The NFL doesn't have to rig anything. They win regardless. Regardless of who plays in the Super Bowl, we all still are going to watch. Regardless if Patrick Mahomes is in it or not, we're still going to watch because the NFL has never been popular, people. If there's any league that needs to rig games, it's the NBA right now because their ratings are declining nearly every single year, it seems like. The two most popular sports in America are the NFL and college football. They run America right now. It's them and everybody else. There's no reason for the NFL to have to rig games because they're going to win regardless. Storylines are what gets people invested in the game. And as somebody who's going to college, studying media, studying communication, and how these leagues go about building up hype for their big events, it doesn't involve them rigging outcomes just so they can get the desired Super Bowl that they think everybody's going to want to watch. If you got an underdog in the Super Bowl that nobody saw coming, people are going to root for that team because they love rooting for the underdog. Everybody loves an underdog story. Everybody loves a David versus Goliath matchup. But if you get a Super Bowl between two heavyweights, then that doesn't mean that it's rigged neither. It just means that you have two of the best teams in the NFL squaring off in the Super Bowl. But the NFL is not rigged. And there's plenty of players that have came out and said that it's not rigged. It's hard to rig an NFL game. No game you can just go into and say, oh yeah, like we need this team to win. Make sure that it happens. Because you know how hard it is to do that? You literally will have to call flags on every single play and make it pretty obvious that you want said team to win. And I'm going to say it one last time before we move on. If the NFL was rigged, why haven't the Cowboys been in more Super Bowls? Because they are the biggest team in America, and it's all about ratings. It's all about making the most revenue, right? So why wouldn't they have their biggest cash cow playing in their biggest event of the year if it's rigged? Come on, man. I was telling my homeboy that, and he kept saying, it's still rigged, it's still rigged. Saying that the NFL is rigged, I really believe is disrespectful to the players that invest their blood, sweat, time, and dedication in the game of football. You think that these players are willing to put all this time in just to lose on purpose because the NFL says they have to? Come on, man. This ain't wrestling. This ain't the WWE. This is the NFL. This is real life. So if you believe the NFL is rigged, then you're welcome to have your opinion. I'm pretty sure there's going to be plenty of people in the comment section that have all kinds of articles and all kinds of weird ways of explaining how and why the NFL is rigged, but it's hard to rig an NFL game. But if saying that the NFL is rigged is the only way you can get over your favorite team losing and that's how you cope, then cool, that's your way of coping. But All I'm here to tell you is that it's a lie. The NFL is not rigged. Have there been referees that have been paid off? Of course. But same thing has happened in the NBA. That's just sports. But the NFL does a really good job at making sure that they maintain the integrity of the game. That's why they don't want these players betting on any games, including the coaches and the refs. So if they are so hard on gambling and they have this strict gambling policy, that's to ensure that they don't have anything the equivalent of insider trading. Because when you have players that gamble on the games, it ruins the integrity of it. And the NFL is all about integrity. They don't have to script anything. If you want to watch something that's scripted, watch wrestling. If you want something that's real, with real outcomes that aren't predetermined, you watch college football. You watch the NFL. You can't predetermine who's going to win an NFL game if you're the National Football League, because you have to call penalties on every single play to ensure that that team can get the win. If you play football and you understand how the game of football works, you want to be calling the NFL rigged. I think the majority of people that say that the league is rigged have never put on the helmet and some damn pads. And I wish that a lot of people that say this who haven't actually did play football. Because if you play football, you will understand how hard it is to rig a game. You need so many things to go a certain way to rig a game. It's different variables, and there's all kinds of variables that are involved in rigging an NFL game that just makes it impossible for a predetermined outcome by the NFL to actually come to actuality. That's why we have upsets. If we didn't have upsets, then I will understand the NFL being a little bit scripted, but they just don't pick and choose who's going to win and lose. These coaches and players are not only playing for championships, but they're playing so they can provide money on the table for their families to eat and to survive. Coaches get fired every single year. We see quarterbacks get their jobs taken every single year for not being able to win. It's way too much money involved in this thing for the NFL to be rigging these games and jeopardizing the livelihoods of their employees.